Maneco64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. It's Thursday, April 2nd, 2020. I have the pleasure of speaking with Mike from Rethinking the Dollar. We've been in contact for over a year. I've done some interviews on his channel, and I decided to call him to do an interview for my channel. Hi, Mike. Thanks for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Mario. I'm doing excellent. And despite all the things happening around us, doing well, and happy to be able to connect with you on your channel. So thanks for having me.
Good. Where are you, Mike?
I am in Michigan, so right outside, or the Detroit metropolitan area is home base for me. So, born and raised in good old USA.
Good, good. So yeah, it's good also to have someone from the States to talk to. Yeah. I have a lot of viewers in the States, but also in the UK. UK viewers probably want to know what's going on, and the American viewers probably want to know what's going on here as well. Yeah. For example, I saw some headlines now saying that they're going to have 100,000 tests a day here from the end of April. But if you calculate the population of the UK, that's 66 million people.
Yeah.
If you test half the people, it's going to take about a year. So I'm not too sure. I actually, excuse me, watched one of your live streams yesterday, and you said something interesting about the loans that they're trying to provide for businesses. Mm-hmm. The fact that a lot of businesses don't want to take loans because they don't want to get into debt. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. So good point. And so before I dive into that, when it comes to the testing aspect, it's the same thing here in the U.S. is that the president is touting the need to get everybody tested. But the question is tested for what? Either you are going to be positive or not. And then also just on an alternative media side, I have some concerns about the tests themselves, but I'll save that. But back to your point about loans here. So as a part of this whole economic stimulus package that President Trump is touting as a way to keep America great, I assume, they're looking to extend loans to small businesses on top of the big corporations, and also provide a little liquidity for the unemployed now. But yet I was reading or listening to a video from a restaurant owner who owns maybe 10 or so chains throughout the country. And he was mentioning how, it sounds good in theory to be able to offer some help to those businesses that are struggling, but not all businesses are struggling. And so he was basically saying that his company is pretty solid. It hurts him to have to lay off, a lot of his staff or furlough them for an unknown period of time. But he was saying that, why would I want to take on debt? Like, I have no interest in taking out a loan, whether I have to pay it back or not, just because that's not a part of his model. And so it looks like they want to put all businesses under the same category, the same way I believe they used to want to try to put all the banks, when the bank bailout happened 10 years ago, they didn't tell who got the loans, but they made all the banks participate in those loans, whether they need it or not. And I think that's the way the government tries to make it look like everyone's can equally participate without there being any singling out any particular companies that might absolutely need it in order to stay alive. So, a lot of people don't want to take on more debt than they are taking on, because we're having a debt crisis right now as we speak. So,
yeah, and let me show you here. In the UK, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. I'm going to try to share this. Okay, where's the, still getting used to. Okay. All right. Can you see that? You see UK set to unveil emergency loans for squeezed middle companies.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing here. And they're also talking about the fact that for the small companies, they dropped one of the conditions, like here, personal guarantees for loans under 250,000 have been largely dropped by most of the banks in the scheme, following complaints from borrowers that they risk the loss of their property and savings. So the thing is, a lot of these small businesses, the people, their property, they probably have a mortgage as well, and right now they're probably not being able to pay the mortgage if they're not getting service the mortgage if they're not getting an income.
Right.
So yeah, it's happening here as well, and I'm not sure this is gonna work.
Yeah, I think this month of April, we're going to definitely see the retail apocalypse as well as mortgage apocalypse all in itself, because I would imagine, especially a lot of the working class, those that are not working, they're going to be confronted with the reality of, do I continue to keep the same narrative of, contributing to my retirement portfolio as well as saving some for retirement, even though I'm not getting anything in the form of interest, as well as my daily bills and food. And so I think there's going to be some tough decisions made this upcoming month of April. And a lot of people will decide to, hey, hold off on paying. And even, just recently, even here in the US, we received a notice saying that, because of the situation, we'll be willing to allow 3 months of no payment, but yet when this is all blown over, we expect you to catch up with no problems.
Yeah, there's no writing off for the public, but the bankers there is.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think by default, a lot of people will choose to take advantage of this emergency stimulus stuff by saying, hey, I'm not going to pay nothing. Let's see what the government does. And that's where we're going to have massive defaults and the trickle-down effect of a lot of things starting to, really turn negative in a sense, even more so.
Yeah, I have a cousin actually in Michigan near you. He contacted me the other day. He watches my videos, and he said that his retirement account has gone down 18%. And I think the stock market doesn't look very good. I mean, earlier today it rebounded like up 500. I saw about an hour ago, let's share this. About an hour ago, it went negative. And now it's back up. Let's have a look.
Yeah, it's a big distortion from reality, man.
Let's share this. So let's look at it now. So you see the Dow futures is up to 50 now. Gold and silver are doing quite well today, which is good. Gold is up, as you can see there, $25. So and what do you think of the? Did you see Donald Trump? He tweeted today that he's working with the Saudis to try to cut production and raise the oil price. And he said that's great news for American businesses. But I would have thought, we just saw 10 million Americans claim for unemployment in the last 2 weeks. And I know they're not driving as much, but they still need to go out to buy food. Yeah. And you think it's great to raise oil prices?
So I can be upfront and honest about the president that's overseeing the country I live in, and I've been questioning a lot of his positions and stances and his tweeting storm for several years now, because he'll tweet one thing, but it doesn't really seem to reflect reality in a lot of sense. So apart from him mentioning, tweeted 2 days ago something about energy cars and we're gonna have greater cars after this, and everything is great, and the economy was great. And I'm thinking, like, what are you? But I understand he has a script to follow as well. But it makes him look bad that he owned the economy up until this point, and as of now, he's talking about now a phase 4 deal, more stimulus, and so clearly he's a person that takes advantage of using debt to his advantage. But I'm assuming he has to know the consequences of all this stuff will not play out well. So whenever he tweets, I'll take it for a grain of salt, but I think about the reverse as to what he's saying. I try to look a little bit deeper because it doesn't make sense to me.
Because I think what it did, that tweet, that got the oil price higher. Yeah, I think it was up almost 30% in a day on a daily basis, right? And that helped the stock market as well, because before he tweeted that out, I think the stock market wasn't doing that well. It was even down on the day.
So, never before, and I haven't really been following the markets as extensively as you have throughout the years, but I've never seen such large gyrations in a day. Up 900, down 1,000, down 4. So that right there signals that we're coming to the point of it's something breaking, if not having broke already. Because as you mentioned, 4,000 or 4 point something million, 6 point something million. Next week going to be another 4 or 5. So as the Federal Reserve mentioned, they're forecasting, they're seeing 47 million within a short period of time. And I take that number and I double it just as a worst case scenario. So who's actually investing right now? Like, who's actually deciding to follow the same narrative other than central banks and all the other
and
stuff
behind the scenes? The top 1% as well, who have a lot of wealth. They're
right. So those numbers, man, they don't represent the normal reality for your average person. So as you mentioned, family members said their accounts are down. That's across the board for everybody. Everyone who was intending on staying in these markets, riding them out for the long term, like we were taught to do, I think they're starting to realize that there's going to be some issues real soon, if not and I follow a lot of people such as you do in the alternative media space, and they're saying that April could be that time frame where something breaks, and the breaks
Yeah,
will, oof.
and I interviewed Mark Faber the other day, and he said something interesting. He think we're at near the end of the asset bubble inflation that we've had since the early '80s.
Yeah.
So, and he doesn't think we're going to see new highs in the stock market.
Yeah,
just like, buy the dip, because that's what they tell us.
Yeah,
every time, look, if you
it's a
bought
great
it,
buying opportunity.
yeah, if you bought it after the 2000 correction, it would have been fine. If you bought it in '09, you'd have been fine. But I think this time it could be different.
Yeah, I agree. So I actually had Charles Hugh Smith on the show the other day, and he was referencing how that we're reaching the point of we're reaching the end of globalization as it was packaged and sold to us up until this point, as well as a financialization of all things paper and digital. Like everything has been spun into a product to sell to the public, and he's saying that as of right now, there are no buyers to continue these bubbles, and so therefore they're going to have to pop, or they're going to basically, because of central bank stimulus and it's this being a global event, they're going to inflate it away to the point where they burst because there's no semblance of reality and all.
Well, they hyperinflate it, and then people lose confidence in the currencies.
Right. So anyway, it's a default baked into the cake, whether it's default or actual just hyperinflationary, which is all in the same.
I think hyperinflationary would probably be good because it's like it happens quite quickly. Deflation, it could be a bit like Japan. It could take years and years.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you a question. By all central banks now being in the same boat of trying to coordinate their efforts to prop this thing up and to extend it, can you see them drawing some life out of this? Because there'll be no one currency that will outdo the other, apart from the Dixie. The dollar is supposed to be strongest, but it'll be the last of all currencies that remain, with some type of representation to them. But do you see them being able to draw more, because since they're all in the same game together now?
Well, I don't think so. I think they're running out of ammunition. Mm-hmm. The Fed had a little bit of leeway. They were able to cut from 1.5 or 2, and I think 2.25 it was, because they cut rates 3 times last year.
Yeah.
So they had a bit more room, but all the other central banks don't have that much room, and their balance sheets are already really big, mm-hmm. and they're going to get a lot bigger, and there's a limit to it. Why is there a limit? Someone might say, oh, they can just create money out of thin air and buy assets, but people will see that and they will lose confidence, because they're going to say, wait a second, how can, the Fed has just gone from 4 trillion to 25 trillion in 2 years. They just created a U.S. economy out of thin air. Mm-hmm. That's not right. So I don't think so. I think this time it's not going to work, nor the fiscal. And why the fiscal? Because, again, I think we've got a lot of debt already here in the UK and in the US as well. We're like over 100% of GDP. And some people might say, well, Japan has got over 200. Well, but the Japanese people were big savers, and Japan is a creditor nation. The UK and the US aren't.
Right. And on top of that, we got the phase 4 deal that President Trump just tweeted out, I think, yesterday. And so I wasn't aware of a phase 4. I thought we were still in 1 and 2. So I'm trying to figure out
where's 3.
What did I miss in between? And so infrastructure spending is something he ran upon. So because the borrowing costs are so low, he's like, why not take advantage of this right now? And I'm thinking, like, at this current moment when everyone's supposed to be quarantined, apart from public workers, exactly who's going to be out building roads, and so that's why I believe that they're trying to get the very last life out of this current monetary structure before they either pull the plug or they let this thing kill itself over. So, 2 trillion is
I mean, if you're going to have build roads, you need a lot of materials and machinery, and a lot of those businesses are shut down. How can you do that? It doesn't make sense. I wanted to ask you, because here in the UK, the last few weeks, we've had a lot of, especially the retail sector, they've had problems buying gold and silver. Is the same thing happening on your side of the pond?
Yes. So that's been something that I've been confronted with by a variety of major online dealers here in the U.S., whether it be, no names, but a lot of the big boys are right now 3 or 4 or 5 weeks behind on their deliveries. And so it's one of those things where one of my concerns is that because inventory is low now, unless you probably have been sitting on some weight for some time now, you might be willing to open up your vaults, but then the premiums are becoming somewhat large. And so I'd imagine I'm hearing about mines shutting down. And so to my current, like all the local places that I deal with here in the Metro Detroit area, they're all sold out. So as people have lost their paper wealth from their portfolios, they've thought the best way to counterbalance that is to run to the metals. And now we're seeing, I think, a global shortage of metal. So one of my biggest concerns is that this upcoming month, that with mines shutting down and the COMEX, LBMA stuff starting to unwind, there might not be enough metals to source at this current price to where the price will have to surely reflect what demand is, which we'll see if they let that ripcord go and let the price actually go out there to discover free market wise. So, but shortages is something that's big here.
Yeah, so here as well, and I heard as well from my viewers in the continent, like places like Holland, that they don't have any there. Mm-hmm. I heard someone talking about Singapore, that there were problems getting some metal. So it looks like it's a worldwide thing, and it could be pointing to trouble ahead for the fiat currencies.
Yeah. One of the things I mentioned is that, and always telling people to be ahead of the game. And so one of my mottos over my channel is just, get your weight up. Like, you shouldn't have waited to this point to, redeem some of those notes in the first place. You should have been a gradual thing you should have been doing all along. So I'm sure a lot of your viewers as well as mine, they've been doing that. But it's one of those things where you can never have more than enough, in a sense where I think you don't want to be trapped into this digital paper illusion solely without having as much weight as you think will be enough to last you and then set you off on the right pathway as this stuff unwinds. But my current issue is that the metals price, even with silver, whatever it was, $13-14, that's, it's the most undervalued asset that I think that we have ever known or I've ever known in the short time of following the markets the way I do now. And it's one of those things where I think the ratio, gold to silver ratio.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
It is unbelievable. But yet, if you've been one of the people that has been able to accumulate at a comfortable level throughout your, time of awareness, you're
not concerned, are you? Yeah.
Exactly. Not at all.
Yeah, you're like in peace.
Yeah.
With yourself. Yeah, and I mean. I have been telling my viewers for almost 4.5 years about gold and silver.
Yeah.
I try not to push it. I just try to tell them what it's about. And I say, if you're interested, these are the places to go here. And of course, probably getting new viewers and subscribers that haven't been involved. And you have to try to keep educating people or informing them about the precious metals and how to get it. But it's really hard right now, it seems, to get precious metals.
I think if you are, so there are a couple sites, and I think 1 or 2 of my viewers shot me a private message, hey Mike, this company still has some. So in last ditch effort, I went out and got a little something more. But it's just the premium side of things. But my current stance is that because things appear to be unwinding faster than we probably all imagined, there's no premium that I wouldn't be willing to pay to get a hold of something so precious and valuable now, knowing that the response of central banks will be very favorable to be any type of weight you're able to hold, whether it's just 1 ounce, a fractional gram, or whatever you can get your hands on. It's going to absorb all the liquidity that's about to come into existence. So, there's no weight that's too less or too much to have at this current point when it's a race to fiat currency to zero. So, I try to tell people if you can get something, you'll be better off than the majority that may not be able to get anything. So start where you can.
I still think it's not too late to get some. And I think a lot of people, like when we went down to 1460 a few weeks ago, they're saying, oh, I'm going to wait until it goes to 1350. It's silly, I think, to wait for $100 or $50 when we know it could potentially go a lot higher.
Yeah.
So
or the spread on that, or the premium on that. No doubt, if it went to 12, 12.9, whatever, it's still going to be at $20 for a Silver Eagle. So it's no matter what, it's just they're going to make up the difference, because you got to realize that those are businesses that's trying to keep their doors open. And so that's another concern, I think, this month, where due to, I'm not sure, do you consider gold and silver bullion dealers as essential to where it's required that they are to stay open, or not?
Probably not.
So,
No.
so
Yeah.
I'm the same way. So if they're
Yeah.
not essential in nature, I can imagine when it comes to the logistics of them being able to order and source their metals to stock their inventory, that might eventually run out, because, you know, I think when it comes to UPS, FedEx, all the major logistic places, as well as the mines shutting down, I don't see a lot of the bullion dealers that haven't been in the game for a long time being able to continue to get their supply without there being interruptions, to where I can see some doors closing within the next couple of months if it remains the same way it is now. So
I agree, and it feels to me that these lockdowns they start out, they tell us, oh, it's going to be over by mid-April, and then they keep extending. I've seen headlines, stories here from the government saying we could be in lockdown potentially until for 6 months, for another 6 months, which is worrying, because just the fact that they're talking about that is just to prepare people. But I wanted to show you here, I'll share this screen. This is a bullion dealer here in the UK, the one that I recommend to my viewers. So these are the prices of, you see the Krugerrand, 13.96, and that's in pounds. And the ounce of gold is right now around just above 1,300. So you can see the premium there is quite high. But if you look at the other coins, the 1 ounce Britannia and 1 ounce Ear of the Monkey, look at the prices, almost 1,600 pounds. The reason why the Krugerrand is lower is because Gold Investments, they have a stock of Krugerrands, you see.
Yeah.
But yeah, the price is almost like in dollars there. You know, 1566.
Yeah, I've seen some 1800s, some 1700s, you know, shopping the web over here. So yeah, that's.
And I heard someone had to pay over 2,000 for in the States for a 1 ounce gold coin.
Yeah, so that's one of the things where it's a mad dash to get as much weight as you can in such short time. Yeah, so more power to you. Like, that's one of my things that as a business, if I was running one of those bullion shops, my concern would be, okay, look at my inventory. Do I have enough to sustain myself as a business for like a year if there are some logistical breakdowns? And so I can imagine if I'm sitting on something supply-wise, I might want to hold off for a while as all this central bank policy stuff unwind, because those prices don't truly reflect the true value of those metals at this current point. So I had Andy Sheckman on, who's a pretty, Miles Franklin, he's a pretty big guy on this side, metals wise. And I put out a question to him. I'm saying, at what point will you probably reconsider, you know, pricing things in dollars, or not really wanting to receive, you know, Federal Reserve notes as payment? And he was like, you know what, Mike, I haven't really thought about that yet. And so I'm thinking, like, with the way these trillions are coming about, I'd imagine at some point you're going to realize you're losing off on exchanging money for debt notes. So I think that type of stuff is something they should start considering.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've heard of 321gold.com. Bob Moriarty. He's got a blog. He's had it for 20 years. And he's quite he's been in the business for like 50 years. He said earlier, I think it was early this year or last year, that he thought the system was breaking down, and he thought that he wouldn't be able to get gold at any price. And I thought that was quite significant, because he's usually quite conservative. He's like, he will come out and say, you need to sell gold now because it's topped, or you need to buy it. He's quite unemotional, but when he said that, I thought it was interesting. And then you've got Alasdair MacLeod from Gold Money. I think he was in an interview with Greg Hunter last week. He said that he sees that fiat currency system collapsing before the end of this year. And I thought that was significant, because again, he's not a, how can I say, a clickbaiter or a promoter. He's quite level-headed. And I thought wow, that's worrying.
Yeah. So that's the thing, like, because of this health scare as the ultimate cover up of everything has been done under the scenes, behind the scenes, is to keep the narrative going. So
Yeah.
if central banks are all doing the same thing, it will all equal the same result. They're going to put more pressure on confidence in paper and digits. Now, have you noticed that along with that, over here in the US especially, the narrative of the digital dollar, or the digital payment system that they're going to try to incorporate, as I believe UBI will be coming next 4 or 5 months. And so, then the Treasury and the Federal Reserve collaborating together for the first time. And so the Federal Reserve always wanted to be separate. Now, I guess, as a part of this grand scheme that they're going to roll out, they're going to work together and coming up with some digital payment point, or rebranding of the Federal Reserve note and system itself.
I saw that. I mean, I think one of the reasons they're working together as well is because the Fed legally, they can't buy corporate bonds and some, they can buy government paper and mortgage-backed securities, which is government guarantee. So they're going to have the Treasury like indirectly own, be the
purchaser,
but the Fed is going to provide the funny money for them.
Yeah.
What else? Oh, I wanted to show you. You said about this health scare. Everyone's blaming especially the central bankers and the politicians, the stock market move and all the programs they're having to do. They're blaming it on the health scare. They're not blaming on the fact that we've had 11 years of massive debt creation and money printing that maybe we're turning around. So I just wanted to share another page just to prove my point. It's the New York Fed website. So you see there, look what it says there, everything, and you go to the Bank of England website and it's the same thing.
Yeah. Oh man. Like, and so like with this whole healthcare situation, there's two narratives. There's a mainstream and there's an alternative. So I have, interesting points on both sides of it, but it's all designed to be the trigger or the catalyst for what was already inevitably going to occur. And so I'm of the mindset, as the whole LIBOR situation was unraveling last year, they were not able to get all the monetary systems and all the different economies onto a common bond system for the interbank lending process. So whatever we try to run out over here, cyber or whatever the name was going to be for the US.
The New York Fed's working on it. I did a video. Lynette Zeng covers that a lot. And I did a video about a month ago about that. I did a bit of research. The problem is that the LIBOR needs to be phased out by the end of next year, but the market participants, it's like they're hooked on it, and they keep using the LIBOR reference. And the regulators and central bankers are having a tough time telling them to change to the new benchmarks. And the other thing as well, the repo crisis that started in September, and the Fed started cutting rates then and raising its balance sheet. So this health scare has just been a little bit of a catalyst for it, but it's not the cause. But unfortunately, most people will think it is the cause.
Yeah, and so just to touch on it even further, it so happens to be 20 years later since the last life-altering event we all experienced, which led to big government and all the all the policies,
all the security at airports.
And to this day, coming and leaving, TSA is it's become very evasive. And so now it's a great time to, I guess, further expand their whatever they want to roll out with all the things that will come as a result of this, which is all very timely. And so,
I'm concerned about that too. Are you going to need to have a vaccine if you want to travel abroad? Are you gonna not be able to use cash anymore because it might be dirty or something, and you gotta?
That's all the steps. So I from an alternative conspiratorial standpoint, I'm open to anything, and so the cashless society push was already well underway. What better way now to really get some momentum by saying that it's one of the leading contaminants, all Federal Reserve notes need to be called back in and quarantined and everything that happened with the Chinese yuan in that Wuhan province. But so that's one way to get people to say, you know what, I don't want to touch cash, because now there's signs around every way. I actually went to a delivery place yesterday to mail a package, and the guy said, we don't do cash, just card. I'm thinking like, what if I didn't have a card? So the stigma's there that cash can be a contaminant. So people will automatically choose to opt out now that this health scare can provide a lot of fire cover for everything. So that's just one of many. And then Dr. Fauci, one of the leading guys here talking about this health scare, I heard him in an interview with Mark Zuckerberg reference that the push is on for a universal vaccine. And so I would assume that Big Pharmaceutical is leading the way, of course. And so they're all, working together globally now to try to get something rolled out that will come as something that we all might have to even travel state to state, more than likely, or something like that. So, it's very frightening, but yet I think that was a part of the original plan. So.
And I think a lot of people are going to make a lot of money, just like they did after that event almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I saw a video from High Impact Vlogs. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
He did a video where he showed President Trump basically doing an infomercial outside the White House, on the White House lawn, for Abbott Laboratories and their testing kit. So he said, we got the president of the United States, the leader of the free world, doing an infomercial for Abbott Laboratories.
Yeah. Now, one of the same things where really caught me by surprise was, I want to say maybe a month ago now, before, when President Trump was saying it was just a flu, no need to worry, no need to protect yourself, don't go out and start shopping, no, it's minor. During that same time, I think the next week, he had all the major CEOs of all the Walmarts, Amazon, and all those major corporations behind him doing a press conference. And that right there looked like a big infomercial, because it was them working together to provide testing and using parking lots and stuff like that. And to my knowledge, on the alternative media side, none of that stuff has actually been utilized, but it's there in case we need it. While the FDA was not quick to want to allow any non-accredited entity to come out with their own testing kit. They had to wait for the official kit from the FDA. And so all those things, like, okay, who's profiting off of all of this? So I'd imagine all those companies that were probably struggling, they're doing fine now. I don't know what stocks they're working with, but yeah.
The same thing has happened here in the UK. And the more I think about it, I think it's a little bit of acting, because up until a few weeks ago, the policy here was that, we're just going to let the virus run so people get immune to it. A little bit like President Trump. Yeah. And then up until a few days ago, they were saying that, I heard yesterday that the testing kits, there's a government institution in the UK, they decide which medicines are appropriate for the National Health Service. And they said, oh no, this testing kit, and I assume it's probably the one from Abbott Laboratories as well, is no good for now. And then today we get a headline that we're going to get them. So it almost seems like they're trying to pretend that they didn't know it was going to happen, that they're trying to avoid it. And then they just go along and play with the program. Like President Trump said, oh, it should be fine by the 1st of April or before Easter. But now he's extending the, it's not called
30 days.
Yeah.
Slow the spread for 30 days. And so
it
was 15, 30.
45.
60, 90. Yeah. So, man. And it just shows to me how either well thought out this was before it started to usher in that one world, global, whatever, or they really are clueless and they are scrambling just as much as the rest of us are to try to understand this. So it all depends on what side of the fence you want to go on. But the end result will be more of what we've witnessed since the last little event to this point. Like, less freedom, less choice, more, governing bodies and more entities being brought into existence. So
loss of privacy and freedom. And have you heard about, was it Meeting 201? Is it called Meeting 201? I think it was in October. Event 201. And I've heard a lot about 5G as well. I don't know if you have. Like Wuhan was where they launched the whole 5G in China. New York as well, they launched 5G. Italy and Spain, they launched 5G.
Yeah. So, and I haven't really dived down a 5G pathway other than knowing that it's all just the fact here in the U.S. Trump was touting the need to get 5G rolled out, and they were not going to cooperate with Huawei, and so all that interchange there. But my thing is, majority of the country now don't really have 4G LTE. So, what's the rush for 5G other than me knowing that, you know, as a part of this next world order, they want automation, everything to be connected, smart TV, smart houses, smart everything except the people. And so whether or not it's an activator of this bio weapon that I believe it is, I don't know, but it looks very suspicious that there's a ramp up of 5G at a time where we're having a national emergency. Like some things should be able to be put on the back burner. And I would assume technology such as that should be one of them, unless it's incorporated to create an outcome that they have in mind. So,
yeah, because there's been a lot of warning the last few years about 5G. And if it is because of that, you'd think, oh, we need to stop this because it's killing a lot of people. But
right.
Doesn't seem, they seem to be using this virus as a cover for it, to me.
Right. I agree. So my thing is, from an American standpoint, is Trump playing along with this? Does he know exactly what was already predetermined to take place before he got in office? And so I'm of the mindset that, you know, the position of itself as leader of the free world as a president, it's already a job you really shouldn't want because of all the
free world. You mean?
Yeah. Yeah. The amount of compromise a person would have to subject themselves to, knowing the amount of information they have, that clearly should have to weigh on your conscience, knowing that in order to get your job done, you're going to have to lie as a part of the job because you can't be truthful. So, you know, a lot of people are out there saying that Trump is going to be the revolutionary guy who's changing he's changing everything. And then other people say he's a part of the establishment and everything else. So depending on which side you go on, I'm looking at the fruit that's coming from the White House right now. And I'm convinced that he's not what people thought he was when he ran.
I agree with you because when he was running in 2016, I thought he was real, and I bought into it. But a few months after he was inaugurated, or 6 months to a year, I started doubting. And now, I'm not convinced that he's going to change anything or drain the swamp or QAnon. I mean, they're waiting for, it's like waiting for I don't know what they're waiting for. It's almost November now, 4 years.
Yeah. And what really is surprising is the fact that I think just today I read something about the Democratic Party. They're going to suspend their candidate nomination process because of everything going on. And so I'm thinking, like, you know, President Trump has been very vocal on saying that, the everything should flow smoothly as normal with this whole political season that we're in over here. And I'm thinking, like, if this, 60-day, 30-day, 40-day quarantine situation continues, there will be no way to vote unless they roll out some type of automated app or something that I still wouldn't necessarily have confidence in. So the question will then be, will there be an election coming up? And if not, that's not something I'm familiar with ever not happening. Then what type of world will we be in then? And so those are all things that I think this year, within the next couple of months, we're going to have to address. And I don't think it's nothing that will be very favorable for the people. And then
what about, you said something about the Democratic Party. So who are they gonna nominate then? Is it gonna be Biden, or could they, if they cancel the mechanisms, they could say, oh, we're gonna bring in Hillary Clinton?
And I've always thought that, they wouldn't mind taking a step back just to get the people fired up before all those Hillary supporters that were disappointed. Yeah. So I can see something surprising coming about, because as of right now, the Democratic Party, they shot themselves in the foot over the last 2 years trying to do everything they can, which made it obvious that it wasn't about the American people. It was about them and their disapproval in Trump. Everything they've done between the funding, the wall, all has shown
impeachment.
That his whole presidency has been a Russiagate and this and this and this. And it was a direct effort led by the Democratic Party, which the American people now realize that it's not about them. And so that whole movement of there was a big movement here in the U.S. of everybody abandoning ship. I forgot what the hashtag was, but a lot of lifelong Democratic voters are saying that, they don't care about us. And I'm thinking, like, going to the Republican side is not really, any better. But, this is one of them things where I think at this moment, out of desperation, anything's possible. So I wouldn't be surprised if Hillary was thrown in there and American people, yeah.
The other thing that's happening here now with Brexit, do you remember Brexit? I mean, it seems so long ago, 2016, the public voted to leave the EU. And yes, we left January 31st this year, but the UK is still supposed to be negotiating a trade deal before the end of this year. And I've been reading now that that might be because of the health crisis. They might delay it for another 1 or 2 years. So technically, we could still be kind of in the EU for another 2 years. So that would be 6 years after actually voting to leave it. So it's
not looking too good over there. Now, one of the biggest things that I think is also extremely timely is the fact that last year we're starting to see so many countries experiencing social unrest, and it was increasing. And the whole Hong Kong situation kind of led the way. And all of a sudden, with this fall event of Wuhan, now the self-quarantine makes it to where you can't really assemble this and that. Because I was under the impression that this spring here in the U.S., we were going to see a lot of uprisings as far as people being fed up with all the public information that's given about the repo market and the trillions and billions being put out there, and also the pinch of people just not having enough funds nowadays. So I think it was also very timely that now you can't assemble. And if you do assemble, pretty soon, if martial law is declared the way I think it might be coming, they're going to make it so that you're going to be punished severely for doing such to express your displeasure. So I don't find that to be by accident. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think the repo crisis in September, they had to bail out some big hedge funds, people that earn billions a year, and they could only do that by having another distraction for people. Look over here. Yeah. And while they're like bailing out Citadel hedge funds, probably bailed out also Bridgewater. I heard Bridgewater, Ray Dalio lost billions as well.
Really?
So I think those were the hedge fund, the repo market problem started with the hedge funds, and the Fed is basically bailed out hedge funds, multi-billionaires. But no one's talking about that because we've got the health crisis. And if they didn't have that, they probably wouldn't have been able to bail them out. Or if they did, people, like you said, would come out in the streets and protest.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this economic stimulus plan that's being rolled out here with the small amounts of, funds provided, I guess, initially as a one-time, but I think they're going to have to continue that type of stuff for everybody here in the U.S. because of all the extra liquidity needed for the corporations. And then eventually, I had a guest on a week ago mentioning how his analytical work and stuff like that is basically saying that the banks now are going to start feeling the pinch as we get into April because of all the loans, non-performing loans that will pick up as people don't repay their debts. And so he was basically saying that the banking system will start unraveling, and once that happens, game over, because it's going to be hard to keep the numbers at 2 trillion or 3 trillion. They're going to need several trillion, if not a lot more, to try to stem the outflows as bank runs probably pick up and all types of other things. So yeah, everything seems to be coming together just in time for a ultimate reset of some kind.
Yeah, it almost feels like they're shutting down. You shut down your computer and you reboot it. They're shutting down the economies and then going to reboot it, and then it's going to have a different program. It's going to run differently, but we don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah, but think about this. That might be the ultimate game plan, but for the population who has no clue as to how they're going to be caught up in the reboot, and then when it comes back on, when they look at their accounts and look at all the things that they thought they had claims to, it won't be the same equivalent in valuation or in probably actual, just property possession itself. So it's going to be hard to keep people from not wanting to go out and express their anger in the streets.
Yeah, and just to finish off then, because I tend to see a lot of division in the U.S. right now as it pertains to the health crisis. The people who support the president, they're kind of a bit not too convinced, and they think it's too draconian. And then you have the other side in the big metropolitan areas. They're worried and they're doing everything. Do you think it could lead to not just unrest, but like some kind of clash between two sides? Seeing that we are in the fourth turning, it's you know, and you go back to the fourth turning, the Civil War in the 1860s was a fourth turning. I'm not trying to say there will be one, but what's your opinion on that?
I do see a division right now amongst the political realm and the people. There's a big disconnect there. The people, we the people, we've lost or may never have had confidence in the powers that be that oversee everything. So I think there will be some division on the political front. But then I think because of a lack of information and awareness as to the true nature of what's going on, I think citizens themselves will ultimately turn upon each other, because the income divide has widened over the last decade. So there's a good portion that has a lot and the majority that have none. And so I imagine as the supply chain situation, which I think will come about within the next couple of weeks, as that rears its head above water, store shelves are empty. I think at that point, it'll be all gloves off as opposed to just mere survival of people not being able to acquire the goods they need. And I'd imagine inner cities will probably work their way out to the suburban areas, thinking that there's more resources out there, as if they're in a different reality. We're all in the same reality of not having enough. But I do see the political confrontation coming pretty soon. And that's why I mentioned the video I did the other day about boarding up stores. Like, I'd imagine out of complete desperation, people will then think the best way to go express their displeasure is to go to stores and malls and grocery stores to start wreaking havoc. And so that right there could lead to some type of civil unrest, where it'll be the people versus people and people versus the government, and a complete chaos in a worst case scenario that I hope does not come. But I think out of just sheer, uneducation as to what the real problem is, people will just look and go any direction looking for an excuse or someone to point the blame. So I could see there being a complete implosion of confidence amongst everybody in general. So that's why not. Sure.
Great. Well, not great, but great for having you. And we should do this more often. As I said to you before the interview, I've been on your channel a few times. It's nice to have you on mine. And thanks again, Mike.
Well, Mario, I appreciate you for having me, and definitely you do a great job of, informing and educating your viewers. And so that's why I love having you on my side. So hopefully I was of value to you today.
You are.
Be safe, be blessed in your neck of the woods, and definitely look forward to connecting again soon, man. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Take care.